Morning and welcome back to the VIP seat. Today is July 22nd. Your co-host Jessie Naor here as usual. And today we also have Preston Holland, who's actually at Oshkosh as we speak. How's the show going, Preston?
I am, Jesse. It is, we record on Monday afternoons. Sorry to break the third wall, and we didn't actually record this at 4 a.m. in the morning on Tuesday. But it's Monday. The show is buzzing. There's a lot of people here. There is what I have seen to be a pretty solid, strong, light business jet presence here. Pilatus is here, of course, with their PC-24s. Jet Access has a pretty big presence here with a Phenom 100. Honda Jet is here. Daher is here, which is kind of a crossover. Epic's booth looks better than it has in the past couple of years, densely filled with airplanes and people with a flight sim in it, which is very cool. But it is it's a good time to be in aviation and at an aviation event, seeing a lot of my friends. So if anybody's listening and you're at Oshkosh, shoot me a message. We'd love to meet up with a listener and take a selfie and post it on LinkedIn.
Well, I didn't go this year, but I actually do have plans to go next year. So I'm pre-booking appointments with people for that.
Yep, we will do a live taping of the VIP seat. So any sponsors that are out there, if you would like to subsidize our stay at Oshkosh, we can do a live taping from your booth. So this is not a plug and not an ask for money, but the last time I did this, it totally worked, and we'll have some exciting announcements about that coming up.
Very nice. Well, speaking of asking for money, Flexjet has had some really successful asking for money. As of Monday of this week, there's an announcement made that they have secured $800 million, the largest private equity investment ever.
Yep, largest private equity investment ever in private aviation.
That's, from L. Catterton, KSL Partners, and J. Software Group. It's led by Catterton, which is also related to the famed Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy group of investors. They'll have a 20% stake in the $800 million investment that they made. So amazing news for Flexjet, and maybe exciting news for more charter operators that PE is finally interested in us again.
Yeah, it sets the peg too at a $4 billion valuation, which is pretty impressive. I think that, that puts them, it squarely puts them up there in the mega category. I think one argument that I got into is not argument, but it was a kind of a back and forth when somebody was saying, oh, well, Flexjet now will catch NetJets and surpass them. And even Ken Rickey will say this. He said it publicly and he said it privately. The reality is that for every 2 airplanes NetJets has, Flexjet has 1 airplane. So they're literally twice the size. Flexjet is growing basically, they're overtaking at something like a 15% growth difference, which means that it would basically take 30 years for Flexjet at the current trajectory to pass NetJets. So they're not probably going to get there, but if you know Ken Rickey, this is the perfect partnership. I did read in Doug Golan's article about it that it all kind of started on an email thread less than a year ago. Well, the original idea was 2008 when Ken Rickey bought Flight Options back, but then recently this kind of transpired pretty quickly. And it's unrelated to the bond issuance that Flexjet had, which was a couple of months ago. They issued a bond in order to kind of raise debt financing. So this is different from that. So, they're totally separate transactions. And Flexjet wasn't even actively fundraising, which is, I think, another interesting thing. It was a nice to have, not a have to have for them, is what kind of their messaging has been out of the Flexjet camp. So good for them. Good for Ken. I hope that he buys himself a fancy watch or a fancy car as a celebration for himself. And maybe, give us a ride in it, right? Come sponsor the VIP seat. We'll do a live taping from your car.
Well, and I have no doubt that many bottles of Moet were circling when this deal finally closed.
Oh, yeah. And there's always going to be Dom Perignon on every Flexjet plane, of course. I wouldn't be surprised if there are Louis Vuitton blankets that are being ordered for Flexjet planes. You think about all of the cool, funny synergies that you could have going into this. It's a match made in heaven.
Totally. Talk about client crossover. Absolutely. These are all the folks that these companies are already servicing. I think it can be hard sometimes, especially, private equity. They don't necessarily put businesses together really well. Everyone's still going to be their own entities and they're so large. But you would hope to see some of those cool partnerships and deals start to come out of this. But yeah, man, wow, really cool. Very exciting.
I think the fashion, I think the fashion industry is better at that than any of the other kind of servicey, boring industries. I think fashion's pretty good at that. I think the other thing is too is that Ken has done this is really the way that I would look at this is more of a recap for Ken. This is a recapitalization for Ken Rickey, who is the going to maintain his chairmanship. He's taken some chips off of the table because he has done the bolting together, and so he brought in FX Air, and he brought in the aircraft brokerage, and he brought in the MRO, and he packaged it all up, and then he sold a chunk of that to private equity, and they're basically saying, yeah, we think it's still going to keep growing.
Yeah, I mean, they are saying they're going to use the proceeds to purchase more aircraft, but as you say, it's still going to take time for aircraft to come through. There's no changing the timelines on when you can get aircraft delivered at this point. So even if you have $1 billion tomorrow, it doesn't mean you're going to be net jets in a year or two or 4 or 5.
Yep, exactly. So I did announce this news on Twitter, and this takes us into the Mile High Madness section. Cue Mile High Madness music. And so I tweeted about this, and I basically was like, hey, congratulations to Flexjet. So I'll pull this up on the screen. Big news. Flexjet raises $800 million from Bernard Arnault, valuing the company at $4 billion. Will we see Louis Vuitton interiors on Flexjet airplanes soon? And I get probably one of the funniest this from this guy named Robert Ricard. He sends me this, and I chuckled out loud. Like, if we get a nice Louis Vuitton, like lime green painted Gulfstream, like now we're talking, baby. So this is the collaboration that we've all been looking for, is finally somebody's going to paint Louis Vuitton on the outside of a G450.
I mean, does that mean you get to mark it up too? Like way ahead, if it's got Louis Vuitton on it?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I mean,
Yeah, it'd be a one of one.
Except for the color choice. I'm not sure about the lime green. Like there was a limited edition Louis Vuitton bag that came out a couple years ago that was like metallic silver. Now you give me a metallic silver airplane with like matte LVs all over it. Yeah, that's money right there.
I think it's, it's kind of one of those things where you want to be loud. It's kind of like those. I'm actually sitting here at Oshkosh. Speaking of loud, Cirrus was giving out like hilarious looking sunglasses last night. So another brand that knows how to be loud. So if you're not watching on YouTube, I'm wearing some of the most ridiculous looking sunglasses. And if you're out there and you wear them, they probably look good on you. They look ridiculous on me.
I mean, I don't know. The 80s are coming back, Preston. Maybe go with it.
Exactly. What have you seen out there on the socials? What's your social media take of the day?
So today, unfortunately, I have some sad news, but I have to honor Felix Baumgartner. He was the guy who in 2016, he jumped out of a capsule and broke the sound barrier with his own body by skydiving I don't remember what point, it was from space. It was the first skydive from space. Amazing feat, but unfortunately he died in a paragliding accident over the weekend in Italy. While we mourn his loss, he died doing what he loved with his boots on, so you can't discredit him for that. But I wanted to play the video for everyone to see because it's just a nice little way to honor Felix's accomplishments to aviation. Here he is. I'm going home now.
I would throw up. I would throw up in that moment. I'm out. I am so out.
I watched this thing live when it happened, and I was like screaming like, ah! But he gets out of control.
How long does it take him to get?
See, he starts to go out of control, and they were really worried like he wasn't going to be able to recover.
I would throw up. I would have puke lined in that helmet. That's disgusting.
The noises that are coming out of him in this video are extreme, but he manages to like right himself back up, pulls his chute at 8,000 feet. I think he was going 843 miles per hour into this.
When he pulled the chute?
I think so.
That's
I don't know
insane.
If he slowed himself down.
I mean, how does that not break all of? How does that?
No idea. But the guy lived on the edge, so you got to give him that. So we salute you, Felix. You're gone from this earth, but not from our memories, and keep living the dream on the other side, man.
Yeah, no, we that was really cool. All right, speaking of exceptionalism of human beings, Joby has successfully flown a hydrogen-powered aircraft, and if you have been reading my content for any period of time, you will see I wrote an entire article about hydrogen aircraft and why it's probably one of the only ways in which you actually democratize private aviation. And Joby appears to have read the article. So congratulations, Joby. I'm just kidding. But they successfully completed. Did I read that report correctly that they flew for 9 hours? Like, did they fly 9 contiguous hours in a circle?
Yes. So this was not
Ooh.
announced. This was not something that people were supposed to know about it, but I think some, folks who are investors, have vested interest in finding out about this stuff, figured it out. But yes, 9 hours in a pattern. It was called their JAI 30, which I find interesting that the article said that it was a CTOL aircraft, which is a conventional takeoff and landing aircraft, just a plane that's hydrogen powered.
Oh, it's just an airplane? If you look at the picture, it's got a V-tail and a high wing, and it looks like it's got puller props on the V-tail, like on the tips of the V-tail, which is pretty wild. But yeah, it's that just makes it a airplane that takes off
Airplane.
and lands, not like a helicopter or a vertical takeoff. It's like nice. It's like renaming sea bass, right? It's like okay.
Yeah, so we're no longer in the eVTOL space. I mean, they are still, I guess, pursuing their eVTOLs, but this kind of suggests to me that, oh, okay, maybe we're actually looking at other options. I've always loved hydrogen. I know that there are problems with sourcing it, the cost of it, containing it, and it's also very flammable. But I agree with you. I just don't know how we get to the net zero without using some alternative fuel because batteries just ain't it right now.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's exciting news, and I think that Joby's kind of one of the last men standing. I mean, they've gobbled up technology from X-Wing, which was a German-based company, is my understanding. They were formerly Uber Elevate. They were, they've kind of become this like conglomeration of all of the pieces of these different programs all together. And so that's good. Whisk is here. So Whisk is here, as is Electra, Aero, and as is Beta Technologies. So there is some eVTOL electric aviation presence at Oshkosh, trying to convince the 80-year-old dudes who fly their Bonanzas that like, hey, you should totally fly hydrogen. Best of luck to you for that. But it's fun. I to be clear, I like hanging out with those guys. I had lunch with a couple of them today, and they're super fun. So if you don't know any GA people, there's a type.
I think they will absolutely adopt that technology. And one of the things I've always thought is like that world should be going after like the GA folks first, or, the wealthy people who just want a toy to play with much more before like fleet operators, because if it's cool and it flies, somebody out there who's already a pilot is going to want to buy one and fly it too.
Yep, exactly. But exciting news for Joby. If you would like to give us any exclusive insider scoops for the next episode, we'd be happy to cover it.
The next story, Mr. Beast has launched a new competition. And in this competition, he had a pilot stay in an airplane for as long as possible. The guy made it 100 days so that he could win. Oh, not a Learjet. You actually pointed out that it's a Hawker. What do we think this thing is?
I believe that it's a Hawker 800 XP. And based off of, and I came to that from seeing the front of the aircraft. And then they're advertising that it's a $2.5 million plane. You can get into so then I narrowed down the age range, which would be somewhere between 2001 and 2005. Right now, that's about where you're at $2.5 million. And then somebody replied to my tweet and said it does not have the Proline 21 avionics, which means that it must be before 2002. So it's probably a 2000 to 2001 Hawker 800 XP with a very nicely refreshed interior. But to be honest, if there's been a pilot living in there for 100 days, I can't imagine that the interior is in as nice of shape as it used to be.
Well, he was winning it, so I guarantee you he took care of that thing. He was like, no, this is my baby now.
Yeah, exactly. And I watched the video, and once again, it reminds me of why shows like this exist, is because the general public just doesn't quantify like how this all works very well. Right? You have Mr. Beast who's like, oh, look at this $2.5 million private jet. And it's like, there's so much like exaggeration or leaving a lot of gaps in information, right? As opposed to like, I don't know, being like a little bit more factual. And I guess that gets the clicks, don't get me wrong. But like, it just is a reminder that like, no, the mainstream media does not really get what we do.
Yeah, I will give some credit. I mean, to make it more interesting, the pilot started talking about, how much things cost, how much he would need to maintain it, all those other things. But I mean, man, this guy was in there for 100 days, no comfortable bed to sleep on, no shower.
And he walks out to a tax bill of like 200 grand or something like that.
Right. So I think the end of the day, he's probably just going to sell this thing as soon as his competition is done. But man, I don't know. Maybe you'll get the listing, Preston. You never know.
Yeah, who knows? That would be. I am like a quarter degree separated from Mr. Beast, so I could probably,
There you go.
figure out how to make that happen. I also did love the like pilot uniform they made him wear. I'm like corporate pilots, other than like if you work for a big company, but even then you're not wearing the like white with the stripes and stuff. I love that they made him wear that. I was like, I was like, it just fits. It just totally fits in with the rest of that whole video.
Well, I always used to have this debate with my pilots before because a lot of people don't like wearing the pilot uniform. But the problem is the flying public, just like when you go to see a doctor and the doctor has the white coat on, there is an association with what you're wearing and what you are. Like, so are you safe if you just have a polo on versus pilot uniform? There's a lot of people that feel more comfortable with you having that on. So I think, I don't know. But yes, my only problem with this video too, because I got to put the safety girl hat on, is he was not well rested and he was eating crappy like lunch meat every day, and he was still flying the airplane every day for them. I find a little bit of a problem with that, and I do think I'm like wondering, is the FAA going to have a problem with his state of mind and his ability to stay safe when flying this aircraft every day or not? I don't know. It kind of did get on the edge for me from a safety perspective. I didn't like that he was obviously not sleeping every night and they were still continuing to make him fly this airplane.
Yep. Yeah, I think well that leads us into our next story. We're talking about the FAA not being cool with being well rested, and this is a subject that Jessie is an expert on and very passionate about. So tell us about the staffing issue with the FAA and all this rest stuff.
So, for those who don't know, I was on an FAA working group for a couple years, and it was regarding Part 135 duty and rest. So, I have heard from some of the foremost experts in pilot fatigue, actually any kind of fatigue, general occupational fatigue. And when you look at the rules that the FAA was coming out with last year, they were trying to get air traffic controllers a rest period of 12 hours between shifts. And you're like, what the heck difference do 12 hours make? When you look at fatigue studies and the research, 12 hours actually is a big deal, especially because it includes you getting to and from your house, you taking a shower, you getting to sleep. You do need more rest when you're working night shifts. And the FAA was trying to help with that by saying, okay, we'll put 12 hours for night shifts, but you get 10 hours for all your other shifts. Unfortunately, the FAA does not have enough staff to make that happen. So this is now getting rolled back a bit with the agreement of the union, by the way, because they all see that there are staffing problems with the situation. From, again, the safety perspective, I don't like it. Oh, we don't have enough staff members, so we're just going to go ahead and roll back the safety changes that we were going to make. Not a good look on the FAA or even the union for kind of accepting this.
Yeah, no, it's a tough thing. I think when you think about rest and duty, I mean, I always want to default to the experts, right? Even if the experts err on the side of caution, I think especially with something as dangerous as ATC and how dangerous that can be for everybody else, me personally tend to lean on the, more is more is better in this scenario, right, than less. So yeah, I think it's a hot topic, hot issue. I think you have a lot of pressure from other parts of the government that are like, hey, fix your stuff, like you've got shortages, all of this, but yet not allowing that to interfere with the actual safety, I think is kind of the key here.
Yeah. And I was looking at like some of the numbers because I really wanted to get into the nitty gritty of like how bad is our staffing shortage at the moment. So we have in the US today around 11,500 staff members. This was according to an article in February. We're short about 3,000. When what's funny is when you go back in history, 11,000 has been where it's been at for a long, long, long time. And our air traffic is only increasing. We're kind of stayed at status quo from a staffing perspective. They're trying to fill those slots as often as they can, but they're really kind of grinding water in terms of growth. Meanwhile, we got more airplanes being bundled into airports than we ever have, and that continues to grow. So I don't know. Something's got to give at some point. We either have to cut back on slots and the amount of traffic that's in the air, which none of us want, or they're going to have to figure this out because it's getting to a critical point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Wrapping up the last story because the F-35s just took off here at Oshkosh and it's about to get very loud on my side. Moving to our last celebrity-driven lawsuit story We love a juicy lawsuit story here, don't we, Jessie?
Well, yeah, and this one is juicy, juicy, juicy. We will definitely post a link to the full legal case because there's a lot going on here, and this is through the fourth appellate court. But Bruce Willis, and trust me, there are lots of Bruce Willis quotes throughout this case in this docket, which is hilarious. I don't know what the attorneys were thinking, but they were having a really good time when they were writing this up. But there's been a maintenance dispute between there was Saturn Aviation, who was managing and maintaining an aircraft that was chartered on behalf of Mr. Willis. Some sort of dispute ensued, and now this fourth court has said, no, you original certificate holder, you're responsible for repaying them for the maintenance issues, plus all the damages, which is totaled almost $1 million in this legal case, which is pretty unusual. You don't really see these cases that often in our industry.
Yeah, and I think it also, it goes to prove that you need to have your agreements really tight and neat and tidy, and you can get judgments done pretty quickly as long as your agreements are neat and tidy. So call your aviation attorney and say, hey, look at this. Do we have risk here? I also think, if you read the court case, I actually still, after I've read a fair amount of info, I still actually have no clue exactly what happened. Like there was a delay and there was like an AOG problem, but I'm like, that happens all the time. Like, I'm not sure why you'd sue someone over that, right? But then it was like, oh, there was certain requirements that were being made, and then there was a dry lease involved. There was a broker, a dry leased airplane, an owner of an airplane, who's got the onus for maintenance, and all that kind of stuff. So it's in the nitty gritty, and anybody who has legal expertise can actually explain. We do not. This is not legal advice. So if you do have that expertise, we would love to understand exactly what happened. But what it appears is that the appellate court has held it up, and so it's going to stick, and the operator is going to be on the hook for about $1 million.
Yeah. And there was some pretty rough stuff in here. You talk about, one thing goes wrong with your contract, then all your dirty laundry is out there for the world to see. There were accusations that a mechanic, had been using drugs in the office, that, they had held together some components with duct tape and zip ties, which, hey, look, zip ties can be an appropriate repair in some cases, not all cases, but there's a lot in here.
And speed tape, which is not duct tape. For the general public, speed tape is not duct tape.
Yeah, but my assumption is it actually was duct tape if it was in the court case and not speed tape, I think. So, but it's just, man, contracts are much better settled outside of cases like this, but it looks like it got pretty nasty and there was a lot of stuff back and forth. But you definitely want to read some of the quotes in there about Zed's dead. I've never seen that in an aviation docket ever.
Yeah, no kidding. And, the big round of applause, like who gets the biggest win here? The attorneys. The legal fees were like half of the $1 million settlement. So congratulations to the attorneys for winning and also getting paid. Hooray.
Oh, man. Well, with that, we should wrap up the show today. We're going to make this a quick one so that Preston can get back to looking at cool airplanes. We're all very jealous, and we hope that you have an awesome time out there.
Thanks, Jessie. Anybody who is out here, feel free to holler at me. Follow Jessie on LinkedIn. Check out her flyingprivate.org. I'm Preston Holland on LinkedIn. Subscribe to the VIP newsletter at thevipseat.com to get all of this in a digestible email and with all the links to the stories. Follow us on social, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, all of that kind of stuff. This show is growing, and the only way that it's going to continue to grow is people like you sharing this with your friends. So send it to your business aviation friends, send it to your owners if they want the spiciest takes in that is short enough for your commute, and we will see you next week.